Susanna was practically skipping down the sidewalk in excitement, her stack of papers fluttering in her hand. What a demented, adorable girl. I already have the first murder scene planned out. I found this site, that theorizes on how they happened. They've got a real-life forensic analyst. I chuckled and did my best to keep up with her. Over the years, I'd grown fairly used to her little pet projects, no matter how random or straight-up meaningless they may be. This one, on the other hand, was on a whole other level. Susanna, you see, had this nasty habit of getting obsessed, and I mean obsessed with something for about a month or two at a time. In the last couple of months, it had been platypuses. No joke. She was this close to getting a ticket to Australia to go study them in the wild. This month was serial killers. Nobody takes those sites seriously for a reason, I told her, trying to dissuade her without causing any damage. She chuckled. Because they're scared, Jim. They're scared any human would stoop to levels like that. There was an almost evil glint in her eye, highlighting the childish twinkle they usually displayed. I coughed, trying not to show that she was scaring me a little bit. The Riverside Killer, she started dramatically, reading off of the hastily scrawled paper in front of her. Dozens of murders committed under the noses of both police and populace. Do you like that tagline? I came up with it myself. I forced a chuckle and nodded. It's catchy. But Susanna, you do know it probably wasn't one killer, right? Susanna let out a long sigh and began to interject. But I continued. It was a bunch of people who saw a way to hide a body and decided they'd keep up the pattern. There are some twisted people out there. Yeah, there are twisted people, she exploded. Twisted people like the Riverside Killer. She punched me in the shoulder, hard. I held it and let out a sarcastic cry in mock pain. I won't lie, it did hurt a little bit, but Susanna didn't need to know that. Even if there was a Riverside Killer, wouldn't getting this close to uncovering him get you in the river yourself? I asked her, a last-ditch effort to discourage her from the Riverside Killer documentary. I could see a narrow alleyway jutting off of the street up ahead. The people need to hear the truth, she cried out, placing her hands on her hip defiantly. The alley was just a few steps away. What on earth was that? I yelled, pointing towards the alleyway. What? Susanna jumped. I think it was a cat. Kitty cat! Susanna took off running down the alleyway. Resigned to the inevitable, I followed behind her. Here, kitty, 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 she called as she knelt to look for the non-existent feline. I stopped and stood over her. Oh, Susanna. She stood up and turned around. So small, so fragile. I felt the familiar stab at my right wrist. Too close, I murmured. Her face contorted as she saw the spike that had emerged from between the two bones of my forearm. The host must be protected, I stated simply as I plunged it into her neck. She stared up at me, struggling to gasp in a breath. As soon as her signature childish light died from her eyes, I absorbed the lifeless body into mine to feed. I would deposit it into the river later. Another victim of the Riverside Killer.